Hey, welcome back. Welcome everyone to another episode of Ecosystem Aces. We're start of the year. We're ready to get ready and raring to go, right, Tim?
That's right. That's right. Shaking out those Christmas and New Year's cobwebs, and it's a bright new year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, I am so excited. Couldn't be more excited to be joined by Timm Hoyt, and Tim is Senior VP of Worldwide Partners and Alliances at SumoLogic. I'm here in Belmont. We're both in the Bay Area, and Tim, you're at Sumo headquarters in Redwood City, and welcome.
Thank you. I'll look out the window and wave to you. We're that close, it seems, but appreciate the time, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Tim, you've had a long career in technology and partnership sales, working with partners and, SumoLogic, currently, but previously with PagerDuty and Druva through incredible growth phase with Druva, and then previously a long time with Brocade.
Yep.
Just, love to pick your brain and we'll sort of geek out on partnerships today, and really looking forward to it. Maybe let's start with Sumo and tell us a little bit, Tim, about just your role and what you and your team are up to these days.
Absolutely. So in my role, I lead the organization that is responsible for all of our partner-orientated business. So what that means in our world is the classic channels of distribution and reselling VAR solution providers. We also have a rich service provider business and a very strong managed service security partner, or MSSP business. We have system integrators. So those include global system integrators, regional system integrators, as well as federal, primarily US federal system integrators. We have strategic alliances that is dominated by one of the large cloud service providers, AWS. And then we also dabble in tech ecosystem partners as well.
Yeah, so that's you got a lot going on, and how do you across those partner categories, how are you organized? How do you have you sort of split up the teams to be effective?
Yeah, so my kind of visual of the organization and the vision that we work with here is something called pillars and a bridge, right? So we're helping customers modernize their cybersecurity estate as well as their application resilience through observability. And often that means customers are changing from something that is deemed today legacy that was appropriate maybe a decade ago into a more modern cloud nature. And to get from metaphorically, right, across the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge you have to have the pillars to support the bridge across that to help the modernization pathway. And so each one of these pillars are those discrete definitions I discussed before. They all serve a unique purpose: a channel reseller, a distributor, a service provider, a system integrator, a cloud service provider. All individually in our organization have assigned and dedicated teams, and they operate on their own goal sheets across the globe. But the real power comes when those pillars together facilitate that bridge that helps us modernize with those partners, a customer's infrastructure, their business processes, and ultimately driving the business outcomes we want. We operate globally. We do have the largest portion of our business is in the North American geography. We have a strong EMEA theater anchored in the UK, with strong strength also in the DACH market and in the Nordics market. We do a smattering in other regions like Israel or Iberia and Italy. And then APJ, as you know, that's a pretty diverse market in many, many ways. We're headquartered out of Singapore there. That's where our leadership team is and my leadership team is. And then we have teams located in Australia, in Korea, and Japan, and then covering the ASEAN market.
So a lot on your plate.
A lot of conference calls and Zooms in pajamas for somebody, for sure. Sure.
Time zones are always a little crazy, especially I think there are some time zones that are pretty tough, like Asia Pacific and the West Coast.
Yes.
And then East Coast with India, because they're each like 12 and a half hours apart. Yep. So it's tough that way.
It is, but it's super important, I think, Chip, to make sure as a role that I have and peers have, is to make sure that you are operating the best of your ability on that team's time zone, right? Mm-hmm. So often I've found in my career, the big calls are always kind of, especially Silicon Valley-based West Coast time zone, and that does, put others at a disadvantage if it's 3 a.m. So I really do my best, and the global team we work with our best to try and rotate a bit, right? So not one geography is always stuck with a dark 30 or consistently dinner time type meetings. So it's really important to operate on the time zone the best that you can of the teams you're working with, and clearly with the partners that you're working with.
Yeah. So let's love to dive in and kind of talk to you about how you're working with partners. These days partnering is complex. You're working with a lot of partners. You're kind of going through a full life cycle of working with partners to understand each of your joint value proposition, build a solution, take it to market. How do you think about that, across the different partner types and in that, observability space? How do you think about that at Sumo?
Yeah, so I think the number one element, it really all begins at the customer, and then those customers that the partner services, right? So at Sumo, we're on our second year of being a partner first organization. So I joined Sumo about 3 years ago with the intent from the board of directors and the leadership team to start to embrace working with partners more. And what drew me to Sumo was the quality of the offering, the relevance of not just today, but where customers are going, what they need, and the roadmap of Sumo, and then the intent to build this partner first motion. Yeah. And so, what we did in the early days is really take a look. It may seem commonsensical, but take a look at what our customers, particularly in the segments and industry we had most success in, what they need, what types of partners, down to the names of those partners that were servicing them most, and then start to work on a strategy plan of understanding that partner's portfolio, what they're doing, because the world is in a great time of modernization, particularly in the reseller side, from classic, I will resell you a product and walk away, to being truly a trusted advisor and helping shape the roadmap of customers. And then as we understood what those customers and then the partners were doing, and where those partners might have gaps, or we thought we had opportunities to strengthen, then we started to engage with them with that purposeful intent of not just, hey, we haven't really talked to you before because we haven't been a partner first org, let us come talk to you about doing the same old. We came in with a thesis of, based on the homework we did, we think this is where customers are going based upon our intel, based upon what industry experts say. We see you guys in the market. We see what you're doing based upon your public-facing strategy. And we think we can help advance your mission purpose and then ultimately your financial outcome by working with us in these capacities. And so by taking that approach, it changed, I think, the conversation from let's just get in there and try and do the classic resell, we're the new face in the room, to really starting to have a more meaningful business conversation that has allowed ourselves to differentiate of our commitment to the partnerships, and then looking across the landscape of what other ISVs or tech companies that are in the portfolio of those partners that we want to work with, and start to connect the dots of what Sumo does and how it amplifies maybe another line of business that's very strong. And they can look at this as another add-on to a use case maybe they sold already to one of their customers, or are, driving at their prospects.
So I love that. I think that's it's a couple of things that I like about that. One is, the sort of the customer first and really looking at what the market is looking for. But then the doing the homework ahead of time on, what are the solution, what's your solution, what's their solution, where are they going in the market, and then really having a much richer conversation about what's our joint value proposition, better together story, and then within certain segments, how you could potentially put something together.
Yeah, I think, look, if you're not willing to properly prepare, then the performance is probably not going to be what you as a vendor want. So I think it's a table stakes for us to do, particularly in the space we're in. I think albeit we are well ranked in the various industry magic quadrants, our brand recognition is not as well known as some of our competitors. Ergo, we have a little bit of an underdog mentality and mindset. And personally, I think that's a tremendously valuable place to be.
Yeah,
because you now have an opportunity to differentiate, be uber creative in how we approach partners and then the market together. And ultimately, there's a lot of opportunity for surprises and in a good way of popping champagne bottles when we start to do good things together.
That's great. How did it go? I'm just curious about this, just the story as well. Just, the sort of bringing you in and the journey of really getting to a partner first organization. What has that journey been like? How has the organization embraced it?
Yeah.
Challenges that you've had along the way? Talk about the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is my third time in this type of role, coming into a very successful company that is in a similar point in time of founding product market fit and driving for scale, and then wanting to start to embrace partners. And Sumo is no different in the sense of the appetite, but the aptitude wasn't necessarily there. And so you have to start first internally, Chip, right? Is codifying a vision. Why are we doing this thing called partner first? What is the outcome? What are the benefits to all the constituents that are there, right? Customers first, the partner community, shareholders and employees alike. And then once you have that vision aligned to cross-functionally internally, of everybody saying, yes, that vision is something that we support and we'd like to get there, then you go from vision to mission. And the mission is where the hard work comes internally first. Right? So if you're not squared away inside the organization and not seeking perfection, but seeking a solid place, then everything you do in the outside is going to be incomplete. So it was spending time after the vision was codified with key functions inside of Sumo. For instance, the CFO's office, the chief customer success officer's office, the legal team. Right? These organizations, and obviously CRO, CMO are critical tip of the spear, but defining what the mission is and what we would need to pivot to a partner first organization from that function. And as expected, they all had requests back to us in order to support that. And once you define the mission and you have an action plan towards that, then you get to the next part, which are the metrics. What are the metrics of success? So vision, mission, metrics. And then you have company-wide metrics, and then you may have some, specific ones that matter a bit more to the customer success team. High orientation on renewal rates, for instance. Obviously, CFO, a big one's going to be increase of revenue, is going to be cost of sale efficiencies. So defining those metrics, and then you have a place where the company internally is squared away to say, yes, we believe in this mission, our vision. We're going to execute on the mission. The metrics will be the telemetry to determine, is it not working? And then you're able to go out into the outside world and have all the confidence for the team and the organization that we're ready to go do this partner first thing. That includes things also like setting a rules of engagement, right? So what are we going to commit to publicly to our partners of how we operate, right? Our ROE is something that is public facing. The number one thing that matters is the name on the back of the jersey of all of our field facing employees, whether they're a partner sales manager, an end user account executive, a system engineer, right? Their behavior, their actions is what ultimately really drives the key to success, and that ROE is a really big part of that. So as you get all that done and you get squared away internally, I think then you're in a much stronger place to execute effectively and efficiently to the partner world. And when you're having those strategic conversations, you can pass the red face test, knowing that it's not just the partner org that is committed to this, right? It is the rest of the organization. It is the product development team who's now thinking early on in engineering and in roadmap development, right? Not just what our customers need, but what partners need to maybe add additional thoughts into the capabilities. And then ultimately, what do they need to be equipped with to go out and help deliver these solutions to their customers?
And it's fantastic. I mean, it's just a great, you just laid out a really great picture there. What's the response been internally within the company? Just sort of, because a lot of it's culture change, right?
Yeah. I mean, of course, everybody just said, absolutely, let's go. And it was simple can be. Kidding. I think the good thing is it generated some healthy discussions and debates. And one of the things that I've enjoyed about being at Sumo is the debates aren't centered around the me. They're centered around the why for the shared outcome. And so there were certainly some areas that were easier than others. But again, I think that's really the important part of establishing that vision and getting the functional leaders, particularly at E-staff and the C-suite, to say, yes, this is important. And then going down to the levels of the organization that are going to be the ones who are helping to execute the mission, make sure they understand that and they're bought in. They're part of the plan, not being told. Right? No one really likes to be told what to do, but if you're, particularly as you're saying, in a change of culture, if they're part of that change, and by the way, great ideas come from everywhere, so you might not, have the full plan. And someone says, "What about this? Did you think about that?" You're like, "Oh my gosh, no, that's a great idea to cover a blind side, or what a wonderful opportunity to capture something we weren't thinking." Then it starts to become more effective in the operational side, but it certainly is a investment of time in the early days. And I'll tell you, as organizations always change, right? People come in, they come out, change roles. It's a little bit, I guess I'm kind of sounding like a bridge fanatic right now, but it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You paint, you start, you finish at the end of it, you trek back your paint cans and you start again. So there's a consistent need for that cadence internally. And that's where the metrics come into play. So you are not just relying on the emotional side, which is important, right? Life and human beings are about emotion and all the good and the other stuff that comes with that. But if you're grounded in the metrics of, this is what we said we would do, how are we measuring against that, what can we do together, it allows a much more team orientated matter than getting into the subjective, well, this is what I think because it's what I think.
Yeah. I love the sort of vision, mission, metrics, framework that you laid out earlier. What are some of the metrics that you found have been important? Obviously, revenue, is a critical one. Anything else that you sort of double click into?
Yeah. So the metrics we look at, the KPIs, are a series of inputs, a series of outputs, and a series of behavioral elements. The inputs are going to be things like top of the funnel deal registration. They're going to be the deal registration to qualified opportunity conversion, right? So what is quality enough to actually have one of our end user sales teams say, yes, this is an opportunity, and qualify that? The associated pipeline that comes from that. Then you start to get into some of the output metrics, which are going to be, what are the top of the funnel opportunity open to close percentages? How does that measure against other sources, whether that be marketing, STRs, AE driven, and you start to look at that telemetry of where are we getting the best ROI of closed 1%. We track the number of new logos, right? As a SaaS company, new logos in, and then retention and expansion are the critical elements. So we track the new logo element. And then obviously we track the ACV that leads to ARR of the business that's driven from our partners, right? In terms of the source. We also look at the business we bring to our partners. Any relationship has to have reciprocity. And so we are very attentive to what are we getting from our partners, right? In that sense. And then what are we giving back to those partners? So we look at the health of that. And then we look at the metrics of things like, what is the time to close, right? The velocity of a deal. How fast did a deal close when it's partner sourced versus Sumo sourced? When did we bring in a partner in terms of, if it's Sumo sourced, what stage was that in? What are the industry segments that we are seeing success in, and maybe we want to go do more in there? And then the behavioral side are things like the accreditations that our partners obtain on Sumo for their sellers, and then for their pre-sales technical staff, as well as what is that partner doing with us or on their own to drive thought leadership awareness, all the way down into discrete demand generation campaigns. So we track all those metrics from top to bottom, and that's how we review the health of the business at a macro, and then allows us to double, triple click into the areas of what's working, not necessarily for the celebratory reason, but what's working. Do we want to pour more fuel into that engine? And then secondarily, right, we know we don't get everything right. So what isn't working, and is it worth continuing to do? Or is there some obvious blinky red light that says, if we press that and fix that button, then it starts to move over into the good?
That's fantastic. Gosh, what you laid it all out. That was well. You mentioned you've just gone through a leadership update, so maybe it was all top of mind.
It certainly is top of mind. 30 minutes ago, got out of the exec deep dive briefing, so some of that's there. But I think for any channel chief that you talk to, they'll have their own
similar version
framework similar to
right.
that. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that's terrific. So we talked about co-building and kind of going after the market. Love the conversation around metrics and outcomes. Talk a little bit about the sort of going to market with partners, and how are you engaging in co-marketing programs and co-selling as well, which can get complicated with a lot of different players involved.
It can, absolutely. I think there's the complications sometimes are well worth it, and I'll give you an example of that. So we are close to AWS. We've been built on AWS since the inception of the company. We're on our third version of our strategic collaboration agreement that was announced this past summer. And for the audience who, if you don't know what an SCA is with AWS, it is a multi-year commitment around set goals, ARR goals, that then has mutual investments into different initiatives. And one of the big initiatives that is close to our heart, and certainly if you listen to AWS leadership is close to theirs, is what they call the tri-party selling.
Yeah.
And so this would be an ISV like SumoLogic together with AWS and their team, and together with a partner. That partner often is, a reseller, a consulting partner. When you build those solutions together, you're now delivering a more predictable outcome for the customer. As you said, it all begins at the customer. The partner's often super excited about that because you're standing on the shoulders of giants with, a AWS and maybe the ISV, and you're delivering a multifaceted solution, right, that maybe touch multiple offerings and personas inside a company that is increasing the stickiness and the resonance of that partner inside of the customer. So that's something we're really focused on. We've seen great success there. I think there's certainly some complications that come in having a partner first motion, most particularly channel conflict, right? So how do you work with partners at a particular customer? That's where the rules of engagement is really essential. When you've got that button down, some people may not like the rule, but at least it's clear. And what I'm finding often, and if you think about the world we live in, we all start at what are called logs, right? These are the fingerprints of infrastructure or applications that developers and builders use to tell what's happening in that instance. We ingest all of that, and then we use it for two cornerstone use cases in log analytics. One is for modern cybersecurity, all the way up into SIM and SOAR. And then we also use it for observability, which is measuring the health of an application and being able to predict if something's going to break, or when it does break, how fast you find it and get that to resolution, especially if it's a customer-facing, revenue-generating app, that matters. And inside of many of the customers we work with, particularly in enterprise, there still is a fairly decent wall between those two organizations. And we often have partner A servicing the observability side of the house and the CTO, and partner B servicing the security side and the CISO. And so that's why, again, rules of engagement are important. We don't deal register. We don't lock off customers. We talk about opportunities. And that's where it facilitates the customer to get what they want ultimately, because they are the ones choosing who and how they want to buy, inclusive of marketplace. And then also is very clear to our partners of where we are going to engage or where we're not in those opportunities.
Yeah, so it's that is interesting. I think with the tri-party, component, bringing everything together, and making sure that everybody's all connected on opportunities. And like you said, it's not necessarily at the customer level, but it's really at the opportunity level, because there could be different organizations within the customer that you're talking to.
Yeah. I think having those rules is important. And then, like in any relationship, particularly my wife reminds me of this quite a bit, communication is key, right? So we try and over communicate, especially if it's going to be a sensitive situation, right? It's important to be upfront and communicative and share what we're hearing, what's happening. And I find that when that happens, even though if the result isn't what maybe one or the other party dreamt of, trust is strengthened, because there is at least being upfront and communicative versus hiding something, literally hiding something, which is always unacceptable in my opinion, or just trying to push it to the side because you're uncomfortable with that, right? It's okay to be uncomfortable and have those conversations. Again, if the partnership in this case is strong, I think you can get through those. And again, often the hard situations are the real litmus tests for a relationship, not just when everything's working well.
Words to live by.
Words to try to live by. Amen.
Yeah. Well, Timm, this has been fantastic. Maybe before we wrap up, I'd love to get your thoughts. Anything that you've been in partnerships for many years, working with partners, anything that you've either picked up along the way or had a leader, early on that just gave you some really good advice that you want to share today?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's be anything that's rocket science or this illuminating, oh my gosh moment. An early leader in my career gave me a book called Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And that the original publication far outdates me. So I know I'm dating myself, but in there, again, there was nothing that was earth shattering, but they are tremendous reminders of the fundamentals of this is a human to human business,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what, right? Particularly in this space we operate in, 90+% of customers in cybersecurity purchase from a channel reseller. And those are people that are there. And so I think, a few lessons that I've learned is, number one, your reputation casts a long shadow. So
Mm-hmm.
do what you say you're going to do or don't and face the consequences. Know that singular transaction and relationship may be something that is a long-term potential. Again, how you handle that, the good or bad. I think second is creativity is super important. Now, creativity can lead to failure, and that's okay. Just try not to fail on the same thing more than once. But I think the creativity side is also something super important in any role, but particularly in the partner business, as customers' worlds are changing rapidly. I heard a saying the other day that it was a great year in the month of AI, right? And our partners, as I said earlier, are in the position now of largely moving into having to reshape themselves or die if they don't, of being these trusted advisors and helping customers navigate the complexity. If you can bring creative solutions, creative storylines, creative engagement models to those partners to stand out and help them differentiate themselves to their customers and prospects, you're going to win more often than you're not, especially when you do what you say you're going to do.
That's fantastic. Great advice, Tim. Thank you. Yeah. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the whole, this whole, session today. Brought a ton of great knowledge and advice. And it sounds like, you've been able to make a big impact over the last 3 years with, really getting SumoLogic into a real partner first organization. So that's exciting, and congrats.
Well, it's, it is the team. I don't say that just like an Oscar person. It legitimately is. And anybody who thinks it's not, you've not seen the movie yet. So it's been a great team effort, a lot of stuff to do. Tremendous thanks to our partners and internal constituents. And obviously, Chip, thank you for the time. It was great to meet you. And maybe we'll strum some of those, guitars at one point.
All right. We're right down the street. So we'll grab coffee and do a little bit of that. So.
There you go. We'll put a little hat out, maybe make a little extra money and delight the crowd. Or be asked to leave. Who knows?
That's right. Tim, thank you. And on behalf of Timm Hoyt, thank you all for joining us, and appreciate it, and have a great 2025, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Chip.
Thanks, Tim.